Malignaggi here with Eyes on the Game, and I'm here at Mandalay Bay being joined by former world champion Paulie Malignaggi. Great to see you. And first off, let's kind of talk about the reason you're here in Las Vegas. The fight Garcia and Rios going down this weekend. Can you kind of, talk a bit about it? Because we all know Garcia is coming off his first loss against Keith Thurman back in March and hasn't been active in about almost a year.
Yeah. Right. Danny Garcia hasn't been active in a year. Coming off that first loss, he took some time off, probably spent some time with the family and whatnot. I see a lot of mixed emotions about this fight. Some people think Rios is past his best and whatnot. But here's the thing about Brandon Rios. He's always come to fight, and he's never been stopped, And Garcia, if you can keep him in the ring and keep him working, you'll probably get a good fight out of him. You know what I'm saying? Rios is the kind of guy who gets in your chest, gets in your face. I'll be the first one to tell you, Helen, Rios probably doesn't have the full tank left that he used to as well. Rios was always an in-your-face guy, but I still think he's going to give you that effort, and I still think he's going to have that good chin, you know what I'm saying? And so if Garcia can get him out of there and Rios can get in his chest a little bit and make him work, I think you could have an exciting fight. Listen, sometimes matchups, it's not always about the very, very tippity top fighting each other. Garcia is very close to the tippity top. Rios was at the tippity top at one point in his career, and he's still a pretty good fighter nonetheless. I also think you got to look at matchups and styles, and I think stylistically, this fight is going to entertain. And at the end of the day, isn't that what it's about? It's about being entertained. You're not always going to get the exact matchups you want. But if you watch a fight on Saturday night and both of these guys go at it and they're excited and they're going at it and they're giving you a fun fight, that's what it's about. You go home and you go home and you can't complain about it. Then you can't go home the next day and say, oh, but he fought this guy, he didn't fight this guy. You know what? Was it entertaining? Was it a good fight? Then that's what counts. And you look up to the next one.
And Rios is coming off a win, I believe, back in June against Aaron Herrera. And then, like I just mentioned, Garcia coming off his first loss and against Keith Thurman. I mean, mentally, though, do you think it will affect him?
You don't know how a guy's going to come back from his first loss, but I think Garcia comported himself very well in that loss. I think he was competitive. I do think Keith won the fight, but I thought it was a good fight, and I thought Danny showed what he's made of. You know what I mean? I thought Danny gave some good shots of his own, and he comported himself well. And Keith's a big puncher. Danny went the full 12 rounds in a very competitive fight. So I don't think this is the kind of thing that gives a negative effect on Danny. I think people still view Danny Garcia in a very positive light, but sometimes you take that year off, you take that time off after that first loss, and you kind of regroup yourself. Maybe you think of the time and you say, you know what, I've been focusing so much on my career, maybe I'll focus on my family. He just had a daughter not that long ago, and spending time with his family and whatnot. You also want to be able to enjoy your money. I mean, Danny's made some good money, get to enjoy it a little bit. And, of course, talking about Rios, yeah, he's a little bit of a comeback. He's fought Aaron Herrera the last fight. He's fought these kind of opponents in his comeback run because, as you remember, he retired not that long ago. But I didn't really take him too seriously because I always thought Brandon was a little bit too young to retire. And a guy like Brandon who's always got fight in him, I expected him to be back. So he's been back, and he's been getting these kind of wins. Listen, Brandon has always been the kind of guy who wasn't very difficult to hit. But he was always the kind of guy who was very difficult to keep off you. You know what I'm saying? And he's still shown that to me. Okay, you want to tell me he's shy, you want to tell me this or that, you're entitled to an opinion. People are entitled to an opinion. But at the end of the day, Brandon has still shown me the willingness to get in your chest and fight and grind you and get in there and grind you down and wear you out and try to break you that way. You know what I'm saying? Danny's one of the most mentally strong fighters in boxing. But I really look forward to seeing Brandon try to break Danny as well, and of course Danny refusing to wilt and break, and of course the skills that there are in between there. Because Brandon's a good inside fighter. He finds the openings for those uppercuts. He finds the openings for those body shots. Danny's got a great sense of timing. I'm visualizing the fight as I'm trying to talk about it, but at the end of the day, I expect a lot of exchanges. I expect a fight that's going to be pressed and pushed, and I expect it to be entertaining.
And entertaining, and kind of like you just mentioned, how Rios had that brief retirement talk. Someone else that had retirement when he was pretty young, Andre Ward, kind of retired, one of the top, if not the top pound-for-pound boxers. Some people are saying, is he going to come back? He kind of teased it a little bit on Twitter. What do you think?
I think there's the thing that one thing that might interest Ward is probably maybe a fight at heavyweight, but it's got to be the right heavyweight. And I noticed there's been rumblings about maybe Tony Bellew. We'll see how he does against David Haye on May 5th. But, a fight with Tony Bellew could be a bit interesting. Why? Because Bellew was also a former light heavyweight, so he's not that huge natural heavyweight where you get in there and this guy's just going to be way too big. Ward can maybe gain the weight to fight at heavyweight against a guy like Tony Bellew, but maybe not a guy like Joshua or a Wilder. Those guys will probably be too big. They make weight classes for a reason, but I think at the end of the day, Ortiz us, and I think if the situation is right, he may come back at that weight. Otherwise, I would be just as unsurprised if he just stays and retires. You know, when I thought Brandon was going to retire, I didn't buy it because Brandon's got a lot of fight in him. You know, Brandon's really an edgy guy. You know what I'm saying? You always feel like this guy's looking to fight. You know what I'm saying? And so when he came back, it didn't surprise me. To a degree, if Ward comes back for anything but Bellew, I would be surprised. Even Bellew, to a degree, would surprise me. But I wouldn't be shocked. We'll put it that way. But if it's anybody but Bellew, I'd be surprised. Andre doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's chomping at the bit to fight.
Yeah, and if Andre does come back at the heavyweight, in the heavyweight division, kind of looking at that division, 2 weeks ago I interviewed Joseph Parker, who is fighting Anthony Joshua. Right now, do you think Anthony is the best heavyweight?
I think he's an elite heavyweight. I don't think we have a best heavyweight right now. I think you have a two-headed monster with Wilder and Joshua for real. But I think you also have some other guys orbiting that area. You know, you have Joseph Parker, who's a very good heavyweight. You know, Tyson Fury's re-entrance into the mix is also something people love to talk about and could pose a little bit of a wild card type of a threat, you know. I think the heavyweight division is fun because we can talk about this. And let's not forget Kubrat Pulev, who was the IBF mandatory for Joshua, but then he pulled out. Pulev, you know, is a tough cookie. He's a tough son of a gun, and you know he's got that Eastern European background with a lot of schooling and a lot of mental determination. I liked him when he fought Vladimir Klitschko. Yeah, Klitschko knocked him out, but he went out fighting. You know, and he's a guy who's going to be fighting, who's going to go out fighting regardless. And he's a big heavyweight, so I still want to see a fight between him and Joshua. He's the IBF mandatory, or him and anybody else. So I think it's already 4 or 5 names just right there. You know, so I think the heavyweight division is becoming fun in that there's a lot of possible fights where you don't necessarily know for sure who's going to win. I think Vladimir Klitschko was so dominant, he made it boring, but I think he also is unappreciated because of that. Vladimir in his prime was so good, and people don't understand it because people, they associate excitement factor with effectiveness, and the two do not go hand in hand necessarily. Sometimes they go nothing hand in hand at all. Sometimes you're so good you're not exciting. You know, and I think that was the case of Vladimir. He was so good that he wasn't exciting. I think now the heavyweight division has nobody that's really standing head and shoulders above the rest. You got some very good fighters, and I still think one king has to be crowned. And you got a couple of possible kings with Joshua and Wilder, and then you got a couple of the other guys vying for that position as well. We'll see if we can crown one king soon.
And you say Joshua and Wilder, obviously they, like I just mentioned, both have fights coming up, Wilder, Ortiz, and then Joshua Parker. First, Joshua Parker, how do you see that fight going? And do you think that, you know, Parker has a chance and the ability to go 12 rounds with him?
You know, I think Parker, if we saw anything from Carlos Takam, is that maybe the smaller heavyweight can trouble Joshua in that way. You know, Parker maybe he's not as big as Joshua, but he's a big enough heavyweight. You know what I'm saying? And he's got ability, and he's got a little bit of athletic ability, a little bit of nimbleness to him. You know, yeah, and he's young. So I think he poses a threat in that way. Joshua is very technically and fundamentally sound, and he's very mentally strong, and he hits very hard, obviously. But he's not as much of an athlete, you know what I'm saying? So maybe he's there to be hit, and we've seen him get there to be hit. Maybe Parker can take advantage with some of those right hands that we've seen Joshua take, you know? Of course, Parker gets hit, just like anybody who gets hit from Joshua, you know, it could be an early night, you know? But I do think there's obviously a threat there. Parker is the WBO heavyweight champion, and he's in that position for a reason. He's earned it. And I think the fight is worthwhile to see and worthwhile to be excited about. You favor Joshua, but you go there with an open mind towards Joseph Parker as well.
And what about Joshua being knocked down before?
You know, I think it's a heavyweight division. You get hit clean, you're gonna go down. Yeah. You know, I don't take too much. I don't put too much stock into that. You know, I've seen a lot of fighters go down throughout their careers. The more good fighters you fight, the more chances you're gonna go down throughout your career. The main thing is to get up, and how you get up. If you don't lose character, if you don't lose faith in your ability to win the fight, I think Joshua showed a ton of character in the fight when he got knocked down. You know, Joshua showed me something. You know, you're fighting Vladimir Klitschko, who's been the dominant heavyweight force in a decade before. He just put you down, you get up, and you come roaring back and knock him out. I think that showed a ton of character there, and really revealed a lot of, and made me gain a lot of respect towards Joshua. Not that he needs respect from me, but what I'm saying is it opened up my eyes to really the character of the man and not just the character of the champion. You know, so I don't put much stock into him going down. I think at that weight class, when you got guys that are that big, you have guys that when their shots are going to land, they're going to go down. Yeah. So we'll see if you stay down or if you get up. And if you get up, how do you get up?
Yeah. Very wise words. And
from a guy who's been down a few times.
Now, what about Wilder Ortiz? Do you think it'll be an easy night for Wilder?
No. I don't think it's an easy night for Wilder. I think Ortiz has that Cuban boxing pedigree. He's not just a puncher. You see, people think about Ortiz and they think about, oh, he's got this big punching power. Yeah, he's had the big punching power. Yeah, is it because of the PEDs or not? You know, that's one of the question marks there because he's been failed PED tests several different times. And so, you know, when you start seeing that, you start to become suspicious. But putting the power aside, he has an ability to fight. He knows how to set you up. This is not just a guy who comes in with big punching power at heavyweight and just looking to land a big shot and get you out of there, and otherwise he doesn't know how to fight. Ortiz actually knows how to fight. He knows how to put you in positions. He knows how to set traps for you, and he's a southpaw. So I think it makes the fight interesting all the less. All the more. I mean, Wilder didn't have a big amateur career, but he was an Olympian. To make the Olympics, you got to know how to box. And he's getting better and better athletically as well. He's putting his athletic ability into his boxing more and more. I think you favor Wilder. But this is a really, really good fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if you might see either guy going down in the fight.